Welcome back to the Matt and Carly podcast. I'm Matt and this is Carly. This is episode number 17. We have been extremely busy and this has not been a priority. So sorry about all you people that like our podcast. We're not monetized yet. So this is spare time for fun. Anyway, we're going to be chatting about some different things as like a little catch up.
Mustard.
A little mustard on
pickles.
the ketchup. Yeah.
Your Travis Scott burger today was so good.
I think
Speaking of ketchup and pickles. What?
McDonald's is stretching it with this Travis Scott thing.
Dunkin' Donuts is also doing something with Charlie D'Amelio.
Let me just say that a quarter pounder with cheese plus bacon is just a normal thing on the McDonald's menu. You can get it anytime you want. And you can also get a Sprite anytime you want. And you can also just say, hey, can I have barbecue sauce? And they'll give it to you. They won't fight you on that. So all you have to do in that little setup is just say, could you put some lettuce on that too? And they go, oh yeah, just give me a quarter. You go, thanks. They give you like $1 off or $1.50 off.
Okay. So it is a little bit off.
It's a price break.
Okay.
It's a price break for a normal item.
Gotcha.
And I did find out that you cannot large size that fry.
I think it's offensive that they only give you barbecue sauce. Like, what if you also want ranch? They're like, no.
No, you can have that.
Oh.
It just comes with barbecue sauce. Anyway, it was really good today. We are going to do a little update. What has been going on? We started homeschooling our kids.
We did.
That was big. We are less than 3 weeks away from the opening day of bow season, and I have located a big old buck to hunt this fall.
Yes.
What else is going on?
We went Petoskey Stone hunting the other day, and it was so fun. It was so cool.
Our kids almost got swept away by a riptide.
Yes.
Not really.
Pre-fall currents in Lake Michigan. I don't know enough about that. Not for me. I don't know enough about it, but it was pretty fall-like when we went there. It was pretty cold. The waves were humongous. There were people out like surfing in wetsuits, and it was not a swimming day. It was really not even a swimming beach. But we decided to go. So a little backstory. I've been Petoskey Stone hunting since I was a young child up here in northern Michigan, and I love it so much. It is so fun to me. I could sit out there all day and just look at rocks. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know what's right with me, but that's me in a nutshell. I love to just like rock hunt.
You're a rock hound.
I'm a rock hound. Absolutely. So we have gone twice this summer. Did we go twice to the Magnus Park? In Petoskey.
Yeah, a couple times.
Yeah, we went up, found some good ones, and then started to like venture out and see other locations and figure out like better things.
Does everybody know what a Petoskey Stone is that's watching this right now?
It depends on who everybody is.
So just
sound off in the comments.
So you know
who's watching.
The Petoskey Stone is the official stone of the state of Michigan.
It is. I learned that a Petoskey Stone used to be 350 million years ago. It was a flower-like.
How many years
350
ago?
million.
350 million years
in
ago.
The Devonian era.
Sure.
But
it used to be a living thing.
It used to be a living coral that looks like little flowers. It's super pretty. Obviously, there's not I heard that gurgle. I bet they did too. Obviously, there are not real photos, but if you Google Petoskey Stone coral or like living coral.
Wait, it's not around anymore?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it's
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore.
So the thing you showed me is not real.
It was like
a Photoshop
graphic.
Oh, okay.
A graphically generated image.
Are the colors real? Nobody knows.
Nobody knows, but they
it was very pretty. The picture you showed me.
They've found some pink. I think there's a pink Petoskey Stone that's like super rare, and I guess it's
the Petoskey.
Yeah, the Petoskey Stone. So yeah. Anyways, we went with your mom. It was so funny. Matt's mom came up to like do some exchanges of goods and some other things that we had like stored at her house, and just to come visit. And we ended up going, and she was like,
we went to the Magna State Park.
Yeah, we went to the Magna State Park.
First.
I just did the same thing you did.
Fark.
We went to Magna State Park up in No, I don't think it's a state park. I think it's a city beach.
It's like a little campground.
Yeah, it's basically a little campground with a beach attached to it. We went there. We convinced Matt's mom to go, and we had a lot of fun. The kids, Adam sits and throws rocks in the water the whole time. He'll just sit, and like the whole beach they're just rock. It's all rocks, and they're little manageable rocks. So he picks them up and he just throws them. He'll sit there for hours, and it's perfect. So you can just like be in his vicinity, like picking up other rocks, whatever. So it's really fun. The girls actually do look for Petoskey stones, and they find them. Like, it's so funny because Lila will pick one up. She'll be like, "Is this one?" And it's like the best one you've ever seen. You're like, "Where did you find that?" But yeah, so we went out with Matt's mom. It was really fun. And then the next day, she was planning to go home, and actually, she was planning to go home that night. And then we convinced her to stay because it was super late. We're like, just stay, like, whatever.
Well, it's like a 2-hour drive.
It's a long drive back to her house. Yeah.
No, just to get to Petoskey from where we were.
Oh, yeah. I just meant,
we had to drive back.
Right. I just meant, like, for her at night.
We're always so optimistic. We're like, oh, we'll be back in like 5 hours. And then it's like 14 hours later.
It never works out like that.
No.
So
of course not.
She ended up staying, and we woke up and we were talking about how much fun we had and kind of like taking pictures of all the stones and looking through everything that we got, going through our haul. And we got kind of all like jacked up about it. And she was like, "Oh, I have a friend, and you know, she's been up here. I'll just like see where she went. I'm curious." Yeah. And then we found out, and then we all kind of looked at each other and we were like, "Do you want to just go again?"
No, correction. Carly and my mom looked at each other and like, let's go spend another day looking at rocks.
Let's go. But no, it's like, oh man, speaking of virtual schooling, we kind of did like a YOLO moment. Yeah,
the second place that we went was awesome.
Yeah.
The place that my mom's friend was like, go there.
Yeah. Well,
it was awesome.
It was kind of like it was a moment where we just decided the girls are doing virtual learning. So we don't have that, like, we have to get to bed on time or they're going to be exhausted all day.
Yeah.
Blah, blah. It's
or
just
kind of
like
be late to school or whatever.
So it's kind of like we're a little bit more flexible. So we were like, you know what? Let's take advantage of this. Let's do it.
Our time consumption during the day has drastically gone down when it comes to school.
Yes.
Just because there's a lot less running back and forth and
cut out
that type of stuff, which is awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So anyways, the second beach that we went to was really cool. It was like you had to walk down a big path, stairway type of thing.
Yeah.
And then
this was just like a legit path down to the lake.
Yeah.
And that's it. It wasn't like a park or anything.
Yeah. And it was a little
sketchy.
It was right into the big Lake Michigan. There was no bay. It was just like full blown. There's Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
Clear across is Wisconsin. Like that was it.
Yeah. And the beach was it wasn't very deep. Like it wasn't very far from the edge of the beach to the water.
Yeah.
And when we got there were like giant white caps coming in because the beach kind of went down and then all of a sudden like 10 feet into the water, it just like dropped 6 feet.
That's sketchy.
And it was like, it was pretty sketchy. So we had to watch our kids like hawks the whole time we were there.
Yeah.
But the cool thing was the waves, because they were crashing and, a lot of water was coming up and down. The rocks it was rocky in certain spots, but the rocks were just like refreshing. They just constantly refreshed.
It was really cool.
That was pretty cool.
It almost looked like, I don't know, how would you describe that shape? Like a...
The shape?
Like
what do you
an
mean?
M. So if you could look at the beach, it was basically, there were like little U shapes of sand and no rock. And then there'd be these little peaks of rocks that would kind of come out.
I wonder why that was.
Probably just the wave pattern and how it like washes up. But it was really cool. So like there'd be a couple little mounds of rocks. And basically, like you said, it was like 2 feet down of just like pure rock. You could just literally dig like this.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't know, there's something about finding those and knowing the pattern to look for and knowing that it's from 350 million years ago and it's a thing. I don't know. It's just it's so cool. It's the same feeling that I get when I shed hunt.
Yeah.
It's so much fun to find. I could sit out there all day.
Playing hide and go seek.
Yeah.
And it's just like constantly you get to find the person.
Yeah.
Over and over and over.
And you see a lot of other really cool rocks that you wouldn't normally give a shit about.
I just want to find one big Petoskey Stone. Like one really nice, like contrasted Petoskey Stone. Yeah. That's all I want. As soon as I find one, I'll be done. Just one big one. That's
you're
all
done?
I want. Yeah, as soon as I find it,
forever.
I'm good.
We'll do it forever.
I mean, I'll go with you, but I will feel complete in my brain.
I like that we were talking about date nights and like trips and things that we do. Just you and I personally. Yeah. We're not big on like going out to dinner for our anniversary or a date or like the typical, not typical, pretty much like the standard of date night is like, oh, well, you know, let's go out to dinner and enjoy a movie or a beer or like whatever, get like a fancy dinner. No,
dinner and
it would
drinks.
be like, let's go shed hunt, let's go rock hunt,
and
let's
go
go
look
camp.
for rocks.
Like that's my definition of going on like an adventure date with you. It's so much fun. I had a lot of fun.
We did really well. We have like a fish tank full of Petoskey stones now.
We do. I have no idea.
There was only a handful of really good ones.
Yeah.
I will say that I was super proud of our kids because the first time, the first beach, it's super chill and mellow.
Yeah.
And Adam, like you said, just throws rocks in. But the girls were finding Petoskey stones there.
Yeah.
And then when we went to the beach that was a little sketchy and it was a little cold and there were big waves, our girls were like in it. They were like going for it. And Lila found a bunch of beach glass, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. She had a little collection of that. And Lauren was picking out all different colored cool rocks and stuff, and she found a really big Petoskey stone.
Yeah.
And she walked up to my mom, she goes, "Grandma, look." And I was like, geez. But she found it, and
it's so funny, like
Adam trucked along too.
Yeah, he was doing good. He was trying to climb up the dunes, which that was funny.
Was tired, I think.
It was really
like
cute.
Ready to go.
It was super cute that they both chose their own different thing to look for. And they went along the whole beach. Like Lila was specifically looking for beach glass, just a decision all on her own. And then Lauren was looking for like red rocks that were like an inch in diameter. She was like, okay, this is what I want. And I'm going to look. And like her whole little bucket was just the same. It was so cute.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It was so sweet.
They were so exhausted after that day.
Oh yeah. That was a day. But anyways,
but it was fun.
So, and then we saw, leading into deer season, we saw a big old buck on the side of the road, random.
So we're like 1 week into September right now when we're recording this.
Yep.
And bow season, Michigan archery deer season starts on October 1st. So I'm like, my brain can't stop thinking about it. Like I wait all year long, like to go hunt. Like I wish I could go out west and do some like pronghorn and stuff right now. So like the best thing I have, shout out to my buddy Brad, shot an elk this year. I'm getting the itch real bad to just like go out and do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that it was like it got me excited because I'm going to try this year.
Yeah. You didn't say what you saw though.
Yeah.
I cut you off.
I said a big old buck.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought I cut you off.
No, your brain might have stopped hearing me.
Yeah.
It stopped listening.
Yeah. We drove by like right at dark on the side of the road. We both went, like, let's reenact it. We're driving. We're like, oh, there's a deer.
Yeah. Oh, shit.
Oh, that's a buck.
It's a buck.
Oh, it's a big buck.
Oh, my God.
And we tried to pull back around and come back and look at it.
So fast.
It was a really big deer.
Yeah.
In full velvet.
It kind of, like, it surprised me because at first I saw its body.
You never see big bucks on the side of the road. You see stupid does and fawns.
Or
and
they're dead.
Yeah, or like little
antlers
stupid
are
bucks.
Cut off.
Yeah, like all the dumb deer that don't come out towards the road. You never see the big bucks.
No.
Like the trophy bucks.
It was pretty cool. But I'm gonna try. I'm gonna have my little moment of my contribution to our freezer here for a second. I'm gonna actually try this year. I'm gonna try to get up every morning or every other morning, whatever, and shoot my bow, like shoot 10 arrows a day and just be ready.
Mm-hmm.
I told Matt, I was like, listen, I did absolutely nothing to scout. I did absolutely nothing to prepare for this, but I will be ready to help you harvest some venison meat if I can contribute. So what is probably going to happen is you will go out as much as you can, try to get what you're going to get.
No.
And then I will take the scraps because, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it here first. I will not step on your toes when it comes to hunting. I know better.
It's kind of funny. We have a family friend, I guess our family friend, whatever. We have a friend. And we were at her house and we were chit-chatting about something about hunting. And she said, oh, yeah, like my husband and somebody else is going out. And somebody mentioned like to one of the neighbors or whoever it was, they were like, oh yeah, we found a really good spot with deer. And like, that's not what we do. We don't tell. And I told her, I'm like, yeah, I was like, usually you tell people you found a good deer after you've gotten the deer. And then you're like, yeah, this is the deer I got. And I'll kind of maybe tell you where sort of it was.
We were laughing so hard because her and I are very similar where we know there's unwritten rules. There's unspoken rules. Like, I'm not good at following those. I like a clear-cut guidebook. Here are your rules, Carly. This is what you have to go off. I don't do well with like the unknowns. I'm just like, I don't know. So I will be more open to being like, oh, you love deer hunting? Well, my husband has all these bucks he's been scouting.
Let him show you like where he goes.
We were laughing so hard because she goes, oh my God, that's how I am too. I was just like, oh yeah, do you want to go hunting? Like, she invited somebody like third removed from her and her husband. She's like, do you want him to go? He can come with my husband. Like that would be awesome. And then she told her husband, he was like,
don't do that.
But yeah, it's really funny. So I know that there are unwritten rules, but our next door neighbor, I laugh at this every time. Our next door neighbor is an older gentleman, and he hunts occasionally. I think he's like what would you call him? A scratch hunter, like a scratch golfer. A scratch hunter. A scratch golfer's really good, right? Shit, wait, a scratch golfer's good.
Yeah, so he's like a weekend warrior.
Yeah. That's what I meant. I mean,
not really. He's so there's different levels of hunters. There's like people like me that like I'm building my own bowstring and I'm like doing all the nerdy stuff. Mm-hmm. Like my buddy Brad says I'm like level 10 nerd archery bow hunting person. Yeah. I'm like way over what most people do. And then you got people that like they own a bow and they go out and hunt. But they're not real serious about it. It's more like for fun. Right. And then you got people that just like wait for the firearm season.
Yeah. And then our neighbor.
Like, they go out and shoot a deer with a gun or whatever.
Yeah.
And it
or
is
a
what
crossbow.
It is. Yeah. And it's like,
so I was laughing because our neighbor.
This is the deer.
You're showing them? Oh.
This is the deer that I have photos, video, and spotting scope video footage of. So I've got trail cams and spotting scopes, and I've seen him in person a bunch of times. And this is you can't see very well, but he walked right in front of the camera, our trail camera. And this is like 5 yards away from where my tree stand's going to be. So anyway, I called dibs on this one already.
So if anybody
So if you hear, if Carly comes on a podcast and she's like, oh, I shot a really good deer, and I'm really disappointed, I will know that she shot my deer.
It's not going to happen. So
she shot the deer that I would like to shoot.
I shouldn't say my deer. Our next door neighbor he's an older guy, and he's a weekend warrior hunter. You know, he's an opening day guy. He goes, and that's like totally fine. If he gets deer, he's happy. If he doesn't, he's happy. Like he's just excited to sit out and whatever. Right. And he's very sweet. And it was really funny because the last couple years that we've been here, Matt's gone out. I think you've gone out each season you've been able to. Yeah.
The first year we were here, I just sat out behind our house.
Yeah.
And because it was legal to bait.
Well, and we butt up to a national forest. So there's like absolutely no one behind us. And it's just basically open.
Yeah. I mean, there's like woods right behind our house. And it butts up to like a lot of wood. So I'm like, oh. Yeah. And the first year you could legally put corn down.
Right.
So I had corn and like Salt Lick. And like I saw deer every single time I sat there. And I only saw one deer. Like what happened was I had one buck come into the corn when I was actually on the trail or in the tree stand, and it came up. There were a bunch of does eating on the corn, and the buck came up, and right before it got up into shooting range, it just like charged in and scared all the does away and ran off. And I was like, that was it. So like it didn't work out very well.
But I don't know. I laughed because I've seen. This is going to be. I'm tooting your horn for you. Matt is a phenomenal hunter. And what I mean by that, and if people who are watching this have no idea about like anything about hunting, or you're a seasoned vet and you know a lot about hunting, this guy puts in the time and the energy and the brain power and the physical needs and anything that like you're like, I can't even describe how in detail and in tune you are with like your hunting success. Yeah. So what's awesome is in any place we've lived in the mountains, we've lived in the Wasatch Mountains in Utah, we've lived in the dead center of a city in Farmington, we've lived now in northern Michigan, we've lived in Pennsylvania where you can't hunt on one day in the weekend. Like it doesn't matter. He will find where the deer are and do as much research as possible, put in all the time, all the scouting, whatever. And he will kill like the one deer in like 20 mile. I cannot explain it. And I'm always like, how do you do this? Even though I'm watching him and he's like, he'll be, sitting in the office, like looking at Onyx Maps or Google Maps. And he's like, okay, hey babe, come here. I think I figured it out. Do you see this little ridge right there? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, there's like a little draw and it goes down to a creek. Like they've got to be right in this little pocket. And I'm like, that just looks like a bunch of trees in a line. What? How? I don't know how you do it, but like, so last year you killed 2 really good deer.
I killed 1 really good deer.
You killed 2 really good deer.
I wouldn't even say it's really good deer. I killed a good deer.
You killed 2 pretty good deer for this area, is what I would classify it as.
For this area, they were pretty good deer.
And on the same day.
Yeah.
On the same day, on the same stand, with a bow.
Yeah.
Like, I was impressed, and this is leading into what I started to say about our neighbor. I think our neighbor was like, I've been here my whole life, and I've never killed a buck like that, but I know people like in surrounding areas that have killed bucks that are like decent. So the other day he came up and I think he's starting to like try to figure you out because he's like, damn, like how did he find these bucks?
Well, we're getting close to hunting season now.
Yeah, but also I think he's stupefied. He's like trying to figure you out, but he's a very sweet guy, and he's like, we're closest to them out of anybody in our neighborhood, I guess, or down our road. But
if he starts shooting his bow, I'm gonna get suspicious.
He drove up and he goes, hey, and he was with his wife, and he's like, hey, how's it going? You guys getting ready for deer season? Yeah, we saw like some bucks down there. We saw some deer down the road. And Matt was kind of like, yeah, like I'm getting ready. I've been kind of like looking. He's like, yeah. Wait, like what are you seeing? And he was like, I've seen a couple bucks. He's like, we've only seen does. Where are you seeing the bucks at, Matt? Matt, where are the bucks? And it was like, you could tell he was like, well, yeah, but where? And Matt was like, oh, just kind of like down the road. He's like, but where down the road? He was so like, I have to figure out how this kid, and like kid because he's an older guy, like how is this person who just moved here figuring all this stuff out? I think it's hilarious. I have the thing that I learned after last year, like, and I've killed some decent deer. Like I shot 1 deer when we were in Farmington, Michigan. Yeah, it was in the city. That blew my mind.
I shot a deer. I shot a buck back in this like
parking lot.
Yeah, it was like, it was in a weird city area type park, and I ended up calling in a buck with a grunt call through a bunch of cattails, and I shot him. And he's a good deer. I think he's technically a 7-point. He's missing a broad tine, but he's like a mainframe 8-point. And I thought, when
you boiled, you didn't get that mounted, right?
You're right. Okay. Yeah, I boiled it. Well, so I shot that deer, and I remember when I drew back on that deer, I went to full draw. He came in, and when he came in at me, and when he turned to walk away, I had to crouch way down in my tree stand, and I shot, and I thought for sure it was a quartering away shot. I thought for sure I hit both lungs. I thought I double lunged him, and I figured he'd be dead in like 15 seconds. And I got down fully thinking I hit both lungs, and I was like golden. And got down and couldn't find my arrow. It was kind of weird. And I ended up bumping that deer in the cattails, and he was alive. And I was like, oh boy. And what had happened was I actually hit him in the liver. I hit like 3 inches back from where I thought I had. And I hit liver and 1 lung. And I looked for that deer for like all day. And I never found him that day. I went back and I ended up with like 0 sign. I just looked at the map and I was like, where would I go? If I was a deer that was badly hurt and I was trying to get away, where would I go? And I went and looked at that spot where I thought I'd go, and he was laying right there. But the bad thing was coyotes had gotten on him, and there was literally nothing left of that deer. Like every little piece of meat was gone off that deer. So the only thing I basically kept was his rack. But from that, and then like my experiences in different places, especially hunting elk, it's like I've learned over time that you just don't waste your time. Now that we have kids, it's a big thing. Like, don't waste your time hunting over a spot or hunting in an area where you think that there might be a buck. Like, there's enough deer leave enough sign on trees and on the ground and within trails, and like if you look at the right pieces of dirt on the ground, you can figure out where they're going and where they're coming. And it's like, I guess now, and like at this point in my life, I don't really care about shooting little young deer, like doe. I mean, like if you have to shoot does, if it's overpopulated, that's one thing. But up here, there's not very many deer. Yeah. So like to waste your time and try to shoot a little tiny buck that's not going to give you very much meat, or like a small doe that's not going to give you much meat, it's like it's kind of a waste of time. So
all I know is those venison backstraps are
tasty.
They taste like straight candy. Yeah. It's so good. Like, so good. I'm really looking forward to that this year.
We are now in the time frame, I think. Well, it's kind of weird that buck we saw on the side of the road was in velvet still.
Yeah, that is weird.
But the bucks where I've been watching them, I think they're all hard-horned now, which means they shed their velvet and they're getting ready to rut and breed.
For the listeners that don't know what velvet is, how would you describe it?
It's basically like furry hair
on their antlers.
On the antlers. Yeah. So when a deer's antlers are growing, because basically it's just bone, it has like it's a velvety like fur basically on the outside of the antlers. And when the antlers get to a point where they have grown to their maximum potential, the blood flow inside the bone, inside the antler, stops, and the velvet basically dies and starts to fall off and get rubbed off.
Yeah.
So when you see, like for the most part in the early season, they don't go places where things scrape up against their antlers. Mm-hmm. Like they won't be in really, really thick cover because they don't want to scrape. I mean, it's basically like really sensitive skin. They don't want to go through stuff that, scrapes up on their antlers. But as soon as that process happens where they drop the velvet and it goes hard-horned, then they tend to shift and they move into where they're going to be, and they start rubbing on trees and making scrapes on the ground, and they'll start leaving sign where they are. So I have like 2.5 weeks to go kind of back where I think they are and see if I can find a rub line where they're, rubbing on trees with their antlers and stuff. Last year it was kind of lucky, not really lucky. Like I found a scrape on the ground, and a scrape is just basically where they paw up the dirt and they like pee and poop in it and, stuff.
Marking their territory kind of.
Yeah. They mark their territory, and it's kind of like just a community place. Mm-hmm. I found one of those and I was like, oh, okay. And as I was walking out, I found a tree about like that big around that had been rubbed by a buck. And I was like, I'm going to be here tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I ended up seeing the deer, and I shot at it and I missed. And 2 days later, I went back and shot him and another buck. But the lucky part was I hung a tree stand without realizing that basically I hung it right in the center of a big rub line. Like I didn't even know the rub line was there, but I hung it based on where I thought I could get a shot. And so last year I hung that tree stand right in the center of a big rub line. This year I just need to go back to the general area where I think he is and find where he's putting his rub line this year. And if I can find that, we should be pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty solid.
He is very into this. More than, what's kind of crazy to think about? Like whoever settled on this land first, and there weren't grocery stores. There weren't supermarkets. You couldn't just go down the road and buy a half a cow or a beef or whatever. People had to survive and feed their families.
There were Native Americans here.
I know. That's what I mean. That's what I mean. That
they were like the OGs of getting it done.
That's what I'm saying. Like I would imagine. Oh, I just did it again. I would imagine that if you could go back in time and have a conversation with a person that was native to the Americas, you would probably learn a ton. And I'm sure most of the things that you're doing right now were just intuitive to that group of people or one person or whatever it was, the main hunter of their group. You had to know that stuff if you were going to go and get
people like me are not as few and far between. Like they were not as uncommon as I am, like to the general public. Like the group of like hunting people that are successful, that like think about it like I do, that's like normal stuff. Like half of your village or half of your group of people like had that skill, and they'd all go out and they'd get food.
That's what I like.
That's how it happened.
I love tracing the visceral drive that you have back to where it's just, I don't know. It's really cool. And especially because we have a family now. And when you bring a deer home, something in my brain's just like, okay, we are good. We have meat. We can put meat in our freezer. And I mean, we have a freezer that's plugged into the electricity, but like, you know what I mean? There's something about, there's something in my brain that I don't know. I've been on this weird kick lately, and I don't know if it's because of the pandemic or because it was a little bit coming out of me a little bit before. But
it's because you're turning into a country pumpkin or whatever you called yourself.
A country pumpkin, like
fake
a fake pumpkin. Because I'm like, I want to be. I'm like a country wannabe pumpkin. But yeah, there's something about homesteading, and I want chickens and a cow at some point, like goats, and have a huge garden and bring deer home. I don't know. I love that.
And
it's so
there's people that might watch this that are like literally living on a farm right now, and they hunt and fish and they do all that shit, and they're looking at us like, look at these idiots.
I was texting, or I was messaging back and forth with my friend Renee. She has a full-blown homestead. She's got 75 chickens that they're raising for meat.
Jeez.
She's got a big old garden. She's got 12 chickens for eggs. And I was like, she's been posting stuff, and I was like, hey, it's me. I'm thinking about chickens. Like, can you help me? What do you do? I don't know what to do. Yeah. But I ended up having like a 30-minute conversation just back and forth on Facebook with her, and I picked her brain, and she told me so many things. She was like, well, if you're going to do this, make sure you get this. And just so you know, if you do this, like, don't do that. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. And so we started talking about homesteading. And I said, how long have you guys been doing this? And she said, a couple years. And I love it. She's like, I love sharing it with people. It's such a cool thing to teach my kids. It's just, you grow your own food, you can your own food, you shoot your own food, you freeze your own food. It's the coolest thing ever. And I'm like, sign me up. Like, how do I do it? And we've been out here for, I don't know, it'll be 3 years this spring. So I think I finally have the time and the mental capacity to really let myself think about all that stuff, and understand, what the work would be that would go into doing something like that. Would it be worth it? I mean, obviously we can drive down the road and buy groceries and meat and not do any of it.
Right.
But does it give you the satisfaction of knowing, or the joy of knowing that you are able to provide for yourself?
Yeah.
And are you able to take care of yourself if for some reason you had to? And I think maybe that's part of what the pandemic did for me this year.
Right.
When that whole thing hit, we had literally nothing in our pantry. We had maybe a week's worth of food that we could have, I'm sure we could have like rationed if we had to,
legit.
But like,
I mean, we had weird stuff in our freezer, but like,
I mean, if like,
to be able to eat well, and healthily.
Yes. That's the way to say it.
Yeah. Like, I'll say the one thing that was cool about seeing when we lived in Utah, the Mormon culture is big on having, I think it's 3 months worth of food storage.
Yeah.
When we rented a house in Utah, we moved in there. There was a giant like shelving system in the basement, and I was like, oh, this is really nice. I'm gonna make this like my tool shelf, because I didn't know I didn't know how big of a cultural, religious, whatever you want to call it, how big it was in their lifestyle. But that's pretty cool, because being able to sustain not only yourself but a family for that long, it's like, when we moved in out here, and we're like 20 minutes outside the city. It's not like crazy,
right?
But we're like out in the country. And when we got here, I was like, oh, I'm feeling good. And then all of a sudden you start having these like random weird problems happen, and like power and heat and water and little things like that. When they go away, I mean, I shouldn't say the little things, the staples of like your life.
Right.
When they go away, like if you don't have electricity and you can't have a freezer running, what happens to all the food in your freezer? Like things like that.
You get your shovel and you start digging a hole.
It's like it puts it into perspective.
Yeah.
How like spoiled, like most people, like, could you imagine? I mean, I know a lot of people are like preppers out there. that are like, for me, I don't really, if something weird happened and we had to feed our family, I feel pretty good that I would spend an afternoon outside and I would get fish
you
or
mean
I'd
if
get
like
food
if restrictions were lifted and
if it was like
exist,
every man for themselves,
yeah.
like I'd feel pretty good for the first month until all the people with the guns came out and shot all the deer. And I'd be like, okay, now we're screwed.
Yeah.
But it's like, there's a lot of things that are taken for granted. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh no, we'll be fine. And then all of a sudden something pops up where like us being out here, like a storm hits and a tree falls down and our power's out. You're like, okay, what does that mean for like just keeping our lives going?
And we call a person to come cut up a tree that fell. But if we didn't have that,
like what would you do?
What would we need? What would we have to do? It's really, man, this experience living out here has been so cool. I've learned so much over the last 2 years, just how to. And we're not doing it like, and we're by no means fully sufficient. I should say that.
We're still
I would love to get
on things.
Yeah, I would love to get closer. Like if this is the spectrum and this is like you live dead center in a city, which is fine. Like no problem with that. If you're like dead center in a city, you're 100% reliant on other people to basically have food, shelter, water, like whatever, which is totally fine. And then this is like McDodge out in Washington, who...
Your cousin?
Yeah, my cousin. My maiden name is Dodge. McDodge, who's like off the grid. I mean, we're like probably a quarter of the way. I would love to get way closer to being really as sufficient as possible.
The thing that we don't have right now in this house is a wood burning stove.
Yeah.
That is one of those things where like if you live out in the country and you are going to have a winter hit or a cold weather hit, that is one of those things that like if we were to buy the house that we're in right now and stay in this house, you would have to have a wood burning stove.
There were a couple times
like safety reasons.
Yeah, we hit a couple times last year.
Nasty winters out here.
Yeah, we ran out of propane a couple times just because we were burning through so much propane when it was -10 or whatever it was. And we ended up, God, I think we went through like 10% of our propane tank in like
a day and a half,
couple days. It was kind of crazy. There were a couple days
you look at it and you're like, oh, we're good. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like,
and there was
heat coming out. We're like, did it really just burn through that?
Yeah, there was a really weird learning curve for us because this is the first time we've ever had propane. And to know how fast it burns and how often to check it, because there's a little gauge on the thing where you can see the percentage.
Yeah.
And to know, just to learn how often to check those things and what to look for. It seems
so simple.
Right. And it's you're just like, okay, it's super cold. We had about X amount percent. You're going to average X% a day. Like we need to go check it in a couple of days and call the people to refill it. We were just like, like no idea that this is how it worked.
Like, I grew up in a house.
I should say I was.
I mean, we both grew up in a house though, not in the country, not a wood burning stove, not a pellet burning stove.
Nope.
It was like, if you pay your heat bill, you're going to have some heat.
Yeah.
Unless something bad happens.
Right.
So like, that's what I grew up. I mean, now looking back on it, I feel like I was an idiot when I first moved in here because like I knew how it worked, but I wasn't like, it wasn't top of mind for me to go, I should go check the propane today. Yeah. Like I should probably do that because in the middle of the night, we might burn through 3% of our propane or like all of a sudden we get a cold stretch and we think we're good. And then, whatever.
I would have never thought to check that kind of stuff. And it's, like you said, it's really simple, but you just kind of like, you just go about your day. You're living normal and you don't think about it. And then all of a sudden,
it's
freezing cold. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah. I would bet you there's a ton of people like our age and younger or even older that have no clue where their heat comes from.
No, don't even know how.
If it's electric or if it's natural gas or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's probably people that have never thought about like, where does my heat come from?
Mm-hmm. That's
like,
what I mean.
There's a thermostat on the wall. I just turn it on.
That's what I mean. That was me. Like that still is me. I'm like a quarter of the way to learning. Not even. I won't even say a quarter. I'm just scraping the surface of learning how all of this like stuff works.
I will never be able to look at anything the same again after having a couple weird experiences.
Yeah.
Like it's just, weird stuff happens. When you're this far out, Like, and we're not even like a mile outside of a major city. We're like, but when you're this far out, it's like, you know, if it was just me and you without kids, it wouldn't be that big of a deal, you know, but it's like all of a sudden, if you're like, oh, it's going to be freezing overnight and our heat just went out and now we have 3 little babies that are going to be popsicles.
Yes, exactly.
That's
you
not
start
good.
to really think about it a little bit more.
Well, it's like, and if you lose electricity, like
that's happened a couple times.
Our water pump is on electricity. So it's like, if you lose your electricity, you lose your water. And you're like, okay, here we go. Now we've got a whole slew of problems.
Yeah.
So
it gets really dark out here really fast too. When the lights go out, it's a little creepy.
It's a little sketchy. Yeah. No, I mean, like defense wise, like I'm the type of person that would like shoot first and ask questions second. Like, so I feel pretty good living out here, like with a family, because I don't have any questions, you know, like I don't have any problem popping somebody that tries to mess with our house. But on, you know, on the other side, it's like the food and like the being self-sustaining for being able to eat, like that thing, I would be in full support to do that, because, you know, if you and I shot a couple turkeys every year, and turkeys don't last very long, but if you shot 3 or 4 or 5 deer, you'd have a giant full freezer
and
full of food.
I genuinely enjoy eating venison. Some people really don't.
Like, think if you shot an elk on top of that. I mean, you'd be good for a year.
You'd have so much meat.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's I've learned, actually I won't even say I've learned. I know people that live in this area that can
what?
Vegetables and fruit. My friend Erica does canning.
Vegetables.
She cans. Yeah. So she actually has a pretty decent sized garden, and then she cans a lot of what she harvests, and then they eat that for a long time. Our next door neighbor has maple trees that he taps out in the front for syrup.
He knocks on them like this.
He knocks on them. He's just like, hello.
Can I have your syrup, please?
He brought some syrup to us for when we first moved in. I know he makes his own sauerkraut. Like, he's got a little garden. And then there's people down the road from us that have goats and chickens, and then all the way down from us they have cows for beef, and like I think they sell them, but like I'm sure they eat them themselves. But yeah, it's like we're in an environment and a community right now where a lot of people truly take care of themselves to some extent with food and you know, whatever they can do. I
think it would be awesome to not only hunt and fish and do that stuff, like to stock your food supply, but it would be awesome to raise cattle. Like, shout out to our buddy Lonnie. Our buddy Lonnie treated me to a T-bone steak dinner once, and he was like, yeah, come on over, we'll have a steak. And I'm like, wow, man. Well, I was thinking like, well, he's like really treating me nice. I'm like, I know I'm cute, but you know, am I that cute for a steak? He brings out this steak that's like the size of a basketball. And I'm like, dude, you didn't have to do that. I was like,
he's like, yeah, Bessie out the back.
Yeah, I was like, dude, you really don't have to drop like $20 on a steak for me. I'm like, I'll just eat like a cheeseburger and we can have a good time, you know? But he was like being nice and cordial and like, you know, having me over for dinner. And he goes, no, I got a whole freezer of it. I'm like, what? He goes, oh yeah, I got a half a side of beef. And I'm like, what? And he like that. I was
right.
You know, 10 years ago, I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, you know, my family has cattle, and you know, like I've got a half of a cow.
Yeah.
And I was like, you got to show me what you're talking about. He opened up his freezer and it was like, oh yeah, these are the steaks and this is all the burger. It was like a body bag full of meat, like my size. He's like, yeah, it's hamburger. I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like going to Walmart to buy my cheeseburgers. I'm like, boy, people live a lot different lifestyle coming from the country.
Yeah. It's really funny.
I like it.
Because I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos on chickens and raising chickens and getting farm fresh eggs and all this stuff. So I've been really thinking about it and keeping my brain active on here's what I would do whenever we're like ready to pull the trigger, and you know, here's how I'd build a coop, and here's the kind of chickens I want to get, and here's how we'd take care of them and how often, and like have, you know, whatever. So I've been thinking about all this stuff. And today when I went to the store to buy eggs, I opened up the thing and I was like, oh like, I don't want to buy these eggs right now because I know what it could be.
Dude,
and it made me mad.
Side note. So Carly has popped up a couple little projects on me and she's like, hey, you're going to do this today. I'm like, all right, whatever.
That's not how I say it.
Yes, it is.
No, it's
like,
not.
hey,
like, hey, babe,
you're going to do this today.
No.
And you usually go, it'll take an hour. And it takes
that's true.
28 hours.
That's true.
But she's watching this video on YouTube of this guy, how to build a chicken coop. She goes, hey, babe, come watch this. I want to show you this. And AKA that means
do this now.
This is what you're going to do for me. You just don't know it yet.
That's not true.
And I start watching this video and this dude's got like, he's in a shop. He's in like a woodworking shop, which we do not have. And he's like laying out like full out walls of framing. And I'm like,
Beach, do you know what?
I'm like, what?
Do you know how much this is going to cost?
This dude starts putting in like legit like framing and he's got like,
this is for a chicken coop.
He's building this chicken coop. It's like half the size of the house we live in. And I go, honey, do you have any idea how much that's going to cost? And she goes, no. And I'm like, well, first of all, why don't you send this guy a message and say like, how much would the raw materials cost? Because I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, before he's even built any of it, I'm like, he's got $500 worth of lumber just laying on this like half of the house.
I don't know any of that information.
I'm like, he's like going ham on this thing. And I'm like, if you think we're doing this in a day and it's going to be inexpensive, we are on different pages.
Yeah.
So that'll be a project for next spring.
Yeah. So anyways,
the giant luxury chicken coop.
The guy emailed me back and he goes, oh yeah, raw materials are about $750. I was like, okay.
That's really not that bad for what it was. It was fancy.
Well, so I talked to my friend. I was talking to Renee last night, and what she said was a manageable amount of chickens is usually, I mean, for like somebody who's just doing it for eggs. Yeah. She said they used to have 25 chickens for eggs. And if you're thinking, you know, a chicken can lay 1 to 5
you gotta eat a lot of eggs
a week, you're gonna get.
How many eggs do they lay a week?
I
thought it said like 1 a day.
It depends. There can be like once they get mature enough.
We're gonna have to start egging people's houses.
I know, right? Oh man, that's really funny. Oh, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, so she said, you know,
were talking to Renee.
Yeah, she said basically we started with 3, and then I got 12, and then I got 25, and the amount of poop you have to clean up for 25 eggs. Did I scream in your ear?
Yeah,
sorry.
A little bit.
The amount of poop and maintenance you have to do on 25 chickens is a lot. Yeah. And she was like, at that point, like the what's it called? The cost effective,
the supply and demand
analysis, basically. Yeah, the cost outweighed the benefits at that point. Her time and her energy.
What is that called? It's the point of diminishing returns.
There you go. Her point of diminishing return had been exceeded.
Was 23 chickens.
So she had gone down to like 12 chickens. And she said 12 is pretty manageable, where you're not spending all day taking care of chickens. You're, you know, and you get a decent amount of eggs. She was like, that works for us. But I had to learn. It was like kind of a hard learning thing. Yeah. And she said, what you should do is build a coop big enough for 12, but get 3 and like see how it goes.
Oh,
and
no. If we doing it, girl, we getting 36. That's what we don't have chickens everywhere. We're going to be selling eggs.
Oh, no. That actually is not a bad idea.
No, it's a terrible idea.
Our next door neighbors do.
No, it's a
Farm fresh eggs.
Terrible idea.
They have a little sign out there.
We get 3 people down our road every month.
Not if you put signs out.
My mom's one of them.
Not if you put signs out. She'd buy eggs. I know she would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grandma, you want to buy like 1,800 eggs every month? She's the only one that's going to watch this podcast. So just so you know, you just got signed up to buy eggs every day.
I don't know. I have such a vision. I just want everything.
We'll get it.
With no work. Yeah.
I will tell you, if you shoot my deer, you can kiss that coop.
I will not. You heard it here first. I told you. I am not going until I get the red flag. I'm basically like, what's it called? A person who's on reserve. I'm like the Army Reserve, but deer hunting. I am ready.
You're like the blister.
Ready. Yeah. What? No. I'm ready. I am ready to go as soon as you're like, hey, I got what I needed to get, but there's still some out there, and we could fill our freezer some more.
Yes.
You're the
blister.
I don't know what that means. After you go for a long walk, I show up.
You show up after all the work's done. a blister.
You're so funny. Okay, well, I'm gonna be a blister that gets some deer meat.
Opening day is in less than 3 weeks.
I'm going with you to film either way.
No, you're gonna go and you're gonna take your bow.
I'm
because
not.
The odds of the deer that I want to shoot walking in are slim, but there are like 4 or 5 other bucks that are good.
But what if those are the only bucks for some reason that walk in that whole season?
Then shoot one. Or shoot 2 of them.
Girl,
you'll get 2 tags.
Girl, I know.
If you shoot 2 bucks, I don't have any pressure to get you venison. And then I can just go out and sit and wait for that big one.
Oh, no. Okay.
I'll give you the green light.
Okay. That's all I'm waiting for.
I will yell at the deer and say, run away, deer. Don't let her shoot you.
I'm ready. I'll be ready. There's
a couple decent young ones that I think for you would be fantastic.
See, that's all.
It'd be like just as big as all the other ones I shot.
I shot a doe out of a tree stand.
You could have shot a buck, but you passed it.
I did. Can we tell? No. We'll just do it quick. I made the ethical choice because it was too dark and I could not see. And I had just gone through hunter safety and I learned all the things.
It was not too dark.
See, this is my guidebook. I have to have the rules.
It was within legal shooting time.
I didn't feel comfortable.
I could see the deer.
I did not feel comfortable.
15 yards away.
I said, no, sir, I cannot feel comfortable, or I don't feel comfortable. I couldn't see very well through my peep sight. I didn't want to take the shot and have it potentially miss. Yep. And I was like, I'm not doing it. I don't feel comfortable. I can tell I don't feel comfortable. Pass.
But she also said, it just wasn't big enough.
I did.
For your first buck.
I really wasn't totally sure.
It just wasn't big enough.
Well, you know why? I've spent hours, hours watching Drury and every hunting DVD you can ever imagine.
The funniest
so I was
memory.
Like, oh, I've got so many.
The funniest thing that I remember from deer hunting, like first buck memory. I hunted on one of my good friends' property when I was in college, and that's where I shot my first buck. And if he's watching, he'll remember this. So when I shot my first buck, he was like, oh shit, like I didn't know there were like decent deer out there. So we went out and we sat, and he had a muzzleloader or a shotgun. I can't remember. Shotgun, muzzleloader. He had a muzzleloader. He bought a muzzleloader. And we had a big, like a big bodied buck come walking up in. And it was kind of weird. I was sitting up in a tree stand. He was sitting on the ground. And this deer comes walking up in, and it's a spike. And like most people that know anything about like whitetail hunting, when you go, oh, it was a spike, they're thinking like, oh, it's like got little spikes, like it's like a year-old deer spike. No, this thing was like a 4.5-year-old buck, and it had like a full-blown like big rack with no tines.
Weird.
It was just like it like had devil horns coming out of its head, creepy. And the horns were like or the antlers were probably 16 inches long, probably like that big around. This thing came up and it was like awesome. And I was like, I've never seen anything like that. And it comes walking in, and I'm like waiting for, like, I watch him pick up his gun. He's pointing the gun. And I'm like, oh, this is done deal. It's like 30 yards away. And I'm like waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting. And he's got his gun on it. And I'm like, there's nothing in the way. He's got to be able to see it. He's not shooting. And finally I just yell down. I go, shoot. I go, shoot it. And he, like, the deer hears it, and I'm like, shoot. I'm like, what are you doing? Shoot it. And I'm like, and the deer like walked off, and I got down. I'm like, what happened? I'm thinking like he pulled the trigger and something weird went wrong. He goes, it just wasn't big enough. And I'm like, that thing was awesome. Oh man, I would have shot it like first thing. It would have been one of those deer like you'll never see another one like that. Right, because
it's so
you'll
weird.
You'll never see a spike that big and that mature.
So funny.
It was like a freak deer.
Yeah.
It was like just a weird non-typical thing with no points, just big like devil tines. So yeah, if he sees this podcast, he'll remember that.
That's so funny. I saw some weird one you just described. There was basically the same thing. It was, I think they called it an airplane buck, and instead of it curving up, it went out,
just straight out,
and it had tines, so it like looked super creepy.
Yeah.
But anyways.
But you're not the only person that was like, no, it wasn't big enough. I've had 2 of those in my lifetime where I'm like, shoot it. Shoot it. It's your first one. Break the ice.
I genuinely did not feel, I was like, ooh, if I miss this, I'm going to be scarred. I'm going to feel.
Part of me wants to see how you react to having a big deer walk underneath you.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like you've never had that experience.
No.
Like buck fever is a real thing where it makes it like your body starts shaking and you can't stop.
That's weird.
Yeah, it's a real thing.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I'll be ready. You just let me know.
3 weeks. We'll be. Speaking of that, we got to go get our tags.
You just let me know. What do you have to do? Just over the counter?
Yeah. Hunting tag and get the combo.
I'm ready.
$2. And
it's only $2?
No. I think up here where we are, there's going to be an antler restriction. So typically, like in Michigan, and I'm not going to speak like officially for this, but typically when you buy a combo license, what that means is they give you 2 buck tags. So if you go in and you buy a single buck tag, they will not sell you another one. But if you buy the combo, you get 2. So it's smarter to do that. Usually one of those tags is restricted. So it has to have the deer that you shoot and you put the tag on that deer. It has to have at least 4 points on one of its antlers to be a restricted tag. But for whatever reason, last year, I want to say, like I wasn't really worried about it because I wasn't interested in shooting small deer. But I think it was like you had to have at least 3 points, not including the brow tine. So basically like an 8-point buck or a 7 or whatever.
Is that the thing where
up here for both tags?
Oh, for both. I was going to say, is that the thing where you can do the first one, it has to be 4, and then your next one can be whatever? Oh, wow.
So typically what happens if you're hunting in an area where you have a restricted tag and then a normal tag, if you shoot a deer and it has 4 points and it meets that restricted tag, you put the restricted tag on that deer,
right,
and then the tag that you have left over, you can shoot whatever you want.
Yeah.
So it's always a gamble because if you shoot something that does not meet the restricted tag and then you put your like standard regular tag on it, then you're restricted on what you can shoot.
That's very interesting. I'm assuming they do that because they know the general population of bucks
deer
and
numbers.
How big and mature they are and what it's going to take to repopulate the next year or not populate if there's too many.
Yeah.
I'm assuming
people in gun season up here, people come up and it's more like touristy. There's a lot of people that hunt, but there's a lot of people that come up here for like deer season alone. Yeah. And if you just let people go out and shoot anything with an antler, your deer population would be like
that's
crash and burn. It'd be done.
And you can shoot with a rifle up here, so it's a lot easier to shoot things.
Where we're from originally in the state of Michigan, you cannot shoot with a center fire rifle. You have to use a shotgun or a muzzleloader.
Yeah.
And that is a lot more challenging.
Right.
Yeah, with a rifle up here, I didn't even consider hunting with a rifle. Like, I almost feel like it's not even fair.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
It's like, it just seems weird. I don't know. Yeah. I'll be hunting with a bow the whole year, probably.
I like bow hunting. It's a lot more peaceful, I think. And it's not as scary. I had to work myself into learning to appreciate guns. If you remember the first time I shot your shotgun into a tree when we were turkey hunting, I was so scared. I was so afraid.
I did get...
Oh, God.
The first time she shot my shotgun, it was my turkey shotgun, and it was a 12 gauge. And for anybody that knows about guns, a 12 gauge is one of the largest bored shotguns you can shoot. And I gave her a 3.5 inch super magnum load. She shot that thing. Oh my gosh.
You're lucky I didn't write you off completely right there. Be like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore.
That thing just about put you on your butt.
It did. I'm pretty sure I took a step backwards.
The first shotgun I ever shot was with my cousin Andy. And Andy, if you're watching this, I still am like, I have PTSD after this. And my Uncle Dick was standing there, and it was a 410. Just a little itty bitty shotgun, like a dinky shotgun. And I think it was a 3-inch 410. What, it was small, whatever it was. It was like one of the most like you give it to like a 7-year-old, like to go rabbit hunting. And I'd never shot a shotgun. And I was like, I want to shoot a shotgun. So they gave me this 410. And, before I pulled the trigger on it, I was like, is it going to kick? Like, what, because I was thinking it was going to be like a 12 gauge, like, big shotgun.
Yeah. And
they were like, hold on tight. Like, yeah, you better hold on, buddy. Like, don't let it kick you. Like, it won't be bad, but you better hold on. And I'm like, and I shot. And they were like, what a dumbass.
Oh.
I've come a long way since that day.
Yeah, I've learned a lot about power behind guns and what is not. I will say when I went out this turkey season, no, was it last year? It must have been last year. And I was like getting ready. I had my gun. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go outside and I'm just going to shoot.
No, that was this year.
Did I throw a bottle up? No, that was last year.
Was it?
Yeah. I threw like a bottle or something up into a tree. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try to shoot it. It was like a water bottle. So it was about the size of a, turkey head or whatever. And I sat down, I like put it right on it, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to hit this thing. And I shot, and it just exploded. And I was like, yes, I've still got it. All right.
Your daughters thought you were cool as shit this year.
I was like,
when you were shooting your shotgun, getting ready for turkey, they were like, oh my gosh, look at mom.
What were we shooting at with your handgun? Was it a watermelon?
Pineapple.
That was fun. That was actually really cool.
Yeah. You shot, for whatever reason, we had 3 pineapples that were like old and kind of mushy. Yeah, so we took all 3 of them out back and shot them with a 40 Smith & Wesson with hollow points. That first one, when you hit that you shot high twice.
Yeah.
The third round hit it like dead center. That thing exploded.
Yeah. Handguns are obviously there's a learning curve to everything, but that was hard for me to go from a shotgun to a handgun. I don't know why. I don't know if it's
they're called dumb guns for a reason.
Oh.
Handguns are.
Why?
Because they're hard to aim.
Yeah, they're challenging.
Compared to something where you can have your hand on the trigger and then your arm
your
out.
Your whole thing, yeah.
The way that you aim is a lot more
I guess it comes
steady.
from your body to like when you're doing a handgun, it's like you don't have as much, I don't know. Oh my God.
Jeez.
I'm sorry. It was really weird.
That blue moon getting you.
I guess. It was really weird, but it was like I had a weird hard time.
It's hard and a lot.
That.
I mean, the handgun that I have, obviously, I bought it because it fits my hand.
That's true.
I bought it because it was comfortable in my hand, not yours. Like I wasn't concerned about. I wonder if my handgun's gonna fit my wife's hand really well.
That's fair. That's true.
You can go out and buy your own handgun.
I should. I've actually really wanted to. I can't remember what I was going to say, but the handgun thing, and then I thought about something else and I forgot. Blowing things up with a handgun was kind of fun. It's good. It's good practice. Good aiming practice too. But yeah, I think all in all, we're on our way to homesteading. We're virtual learning this year. Found some stones. We got stoned, and I mean, you're about to shoot a buck, hopefully.
Yeah. So
you can't put your buck in my chicken coop, so
that's fine. I mentioned this just briefly, but
actually that'd be really cute if you put antlers on the front of it. Okay.
Yeah. So this year my plan was to either buy myself a new bow, or buy a jig. Like it's a bowstring making jig, and they're not cheap, and it's like. Basically, you can buy a bowstring, a new custom bowstring for like $150. And you can just put it on your bow, and then you've got a new bowstring.
That's somebody else making it for you.
That's somebody else making me my bowstring, and I don't want to do that. So I decided.
You're so bougie.
I've had my bow, a Matthews Switchback, since 2005. Yeah, and I've been shooting that every year. And I've only changed the strings on it twice. Your
point of diminishing return is nowhere to be seen. Yeah. You are continuing on.
I had my last cell phone for 7 years. And I think this is my 16th year with my bow.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, anyway, because I bought this bowstring jig instead of a bow, I'm trying to perfect like the process of it. I'm not very good at it yet. I'll get there. But it's taken me... let's see, 1, 2, 3. I think the one that's on the jig right now is my 5th attempt at like a string or a cable, and I think I've got it figured out now. But the cool thing was, if I would have not have gone through that process, I never would have found out my bow that I bought 16 years ago, and I'm the original owner of, has a lifetime warranty. Like Matthews bows have lifetime warranties. I never knew that. The shitty archery shop that sold me the bow, number one, they sold me a bow with a draw length an inch too short. With a compound bow, that's a big deal. And they never told me I should register my bow and have a lifetime warranty. But shout out to the people at Matthews. They're awesome. And they told me that. And they're like, oh, yeah. So they're actually going to send me a brand new set of limbs.
That's awesome.
For my super old bow. And I kind of in my mind, now that I know I'm getting a set of limbs, so I'll have a brand new set of limbs, a brand new set of strings and cables, string and cable, whatever. I think my goal is to keep that bow and hunt with it for 20 years.
That's a pretty good goal.
So basically keep it until 2025 and see if I can get a bear and an elk with it before I'm done.
There you go.
So that's my goal.
That's
I'm
awesome.
going to try to do that in the next 4 years.
Speaking of bear, we need to get Brad on here. Like legitimately. He's done with his elk season, right?
Yeah, he's got no excuse now.
Now he's got no excuse. Okay.
All right, we got to go. I got to go check on my bowstring and start cranking that thing down because it's going to be late again.
I got to go check on my string.
I got to go stretch my string before I do the next one.
Okay.
So anyway, like always, if you made it all the way through, you need a better hobby than watching our podcast. But anyway, thanks for watching. Yeah.
Subscribe for us.
Yeah.
Hey,
if you watch this thing, give us a little subscription.
Yeah. You don't need to turn the bell on. You don't need to be notified.
Nah.
But just, we like to check every once in a while. And I'll hear him from like in the bathroom when he's pooping. Babe, we got another subscriber.
Don't share my pooping stories.
Oh, sorry. He doesn't poop. I'm sorry. That was a lie. He doesn't.
I poof. I don't ever poop.
But anyways, yeah. Subscribe.
I check.
Subscribe if you are so inclined, if you like this type of content. And thumbs ups are always fun. Thumbs downs are, you're watching.
Hey, that works too.
At least you're doing something. Just kidding.
Anyway, thank you for watching.
Yeah.
Until next time, we'll be checking back in and hopefully we're gonna get back on the bandwagon here. So
now that we've got our
we
school
were talking about it today. Now that we've got the homeschool routine and hunting season's coming up, and we're like back into the groove of things.
Mm-hmm.
Not being so weird, we're gonna try to do one a week.
Yeah.
So until the next one, stay safe, enjoy your time.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching.
Peace.
See ya.